I'm Iman Rapetti, and I'm very happy to be the Pipsy interviewer and host for the Media Box.
Thank you. I'm Paul Harris, Country Manager for Flutterwave in South Africa, and I'm very excited to be here.
So we're going to be talking about how we monetize Paystacks. For people not in the know about the concept of Paystacks, just quickly define that for us.
It's changed a lot over the last few years, certainly. You got your traditional payments, which is in-store, people going in-store to buy things, but more and more people have gone online. That's what we do at Flutterwave mainly, is online payments. And when we say online payments, we mean sort of your normal card payments where you put in your debit and credit card number, the CVV number, or whether it's let's say like an Uber, for example, where your card is stored, we call it tokenized, in the background, where you don't even have to worry about it. You put your card in the first time and it keeps pulling off those payments. That's your more traditional version of online payments. And then you have your bank-to-banks like Ozo, for example, will be a good example of that. You'll have SnapScan and Zapper, which are your QR payments. And then more recently, your vouchering payments like, let's say, One Voucher from PEP. They brought up One Voucher, which is a brilliant vouchering system. And what we do is we aggregate all those payments. You have one integration, and then you can use them all across one integration rather than integrating into every single one by itself. So it makes payments a whole lot easier. Payments, I've always said, are like naughty kids. They should be seen and not heard. Unfortunately, it isn't always that way, and it can be quite complex. Luckily, we found a way to uncomplicate that and make payments easier and more accessible.
That's wonderful. So it's about harmonizing the various options on one platform.
Correct. That's exactly what we do. And also not just here in South Africa, across the board, across Africa. We're in 31 African countries. You do one integration, you get payments across all those countries. And depending what jurisdiction you're in, is depending what payment options are used the most. If you go to Kenya, for example, then you're looking at M-Pesa, more wallet sort of payments. Whereas South Africa, it's a bit more structured.
So how do you monetize it, I suppose, is one of the golden questions.
It is, and I think that there was one of the questions that came up in the previous chat in the main auditorium. Is I think business models are having to evolve. With payments becoming more and more competitive, it's a race to the bottom in price. I think for me, it's more service oriented, becoming service products, and giving merchants what they need from a service perspective. I don't think consumers should pay at all. I think that payments for consumers should be free. I think it's going to come eventually where consumers won't pay anything. I think it's a business to business deal where merchants pay for the ability to use payments and consumers have it free.
That's so interesting. I mean, if you think about South Africa is amongst the top 3 on the African continent, along with Nigeria and Kenya, in terms of driving the type of digital behavior that you're talking about this morning. And you've got your M-Pesas, you've got your Oza, which is used in South Africa. How do are we innovating enough for the changes?
Yes and no. I think certain segments of the market, yes. I think certain segments of the market, no. And the reason why I say that, I think that still the informal market is underserved. Certainly cash is too prevalent throughout Africa, especially South Africa.
And we heard from one of the panels just now that creates too much friction.
It creates far too much friction. It creates risk, which is, we know it's not the safest place in the world. We know this in South Africa. So it creates that risk aspect of having cash. It doesn't lend well to the fiscus because you have a large portion of the business community not paying tax because it's an informal sector. Making things easy. I mean, I loved what the one gentleman said. I couldn't remember his name. He said that every single informal business should have access to digital payments. I totally agree. So in that sector, no, we're not doing enough. I think that since COVID, a lot more people are shopping online. A lot more people are accessing and trying out new payment methods. So in that sort of area, we're leaps and bounds ahead of where we were. But to answer your question, I think we're 5% of the way there. I still think there's 95% of the market still not being served.
Which means there's a massive opportunity there, not only to get more people playing in that space, becoming digital. Well, I suppose, can you be a digital native if you adopt something? Well, digital adopter then later on. So there's that opportunity that exists. The options are endless, right?
It is, but it's a business discussion. It's how do you make money, right? And at the end of the day, that's what fintechs are here for, is first of all to serve, make things easier, and then to turn profits for your shareholders. Unfortunately, it is what it is. And finding that business model for the informal market has been quite tricky. You've got to challenge the way businesses make money in order to do it. The big banks have done incredibly well in South Africa. Capitec have come in and really changed the market, but their model is still pay first and then get later. Whereas I feel you should be giving a service first, and only paying for the portion of the service you use, and building a business model around that, rather than building a business model you pay me no matter what. I think that hasn't worked in the informal sector. We've seen that, very price sensitive in that area. It is changing, but very slowly. I think too slowly. I think you'll see in the next sort of 5 years, it will slowly start getting quicker and quicker to reach that pinnacle where we can actually service the informal market.
It's so interesting. I mean, let's think about more of the obstacles that stand in the way, and perhaps we could look to the COVID moment where you saw a lot of digital adoption. People simply had no option but to go online. Did we retain those clients? Was there a massive transformation that was sustainable, or did they just go back to their old ways of how they would purchase before?
Very, very good question. I think that a bit of both. I think that you take the likes of the 60/60, for example, completely revolutionized payments. I mean, they really have. And the shopping experience, let me say that rather than payments. I mean, I was one of those, I'm my age away, one of those older guys that, wasn't buying anything online. I had to go and feel it and touch it and put it in my trolley. Whereas I haven't been to a retail store in 2 years. Everything's online, mostly on 60/60. But I mean, what they've done is phenomenal. To go back to the previous one about what we were doing, I mean, I was fortunate enough to travel to India a lot in my previous life. And what got me a love for payments was India. And the fact that the informal market there has become completely digitized. When I say completely, 90% digitized. There's still cash, but the likes, these big fintechs that have gone in there. Paytm is the biggest one. The first time I went to India was all cash. I bought some trinkets for my kids and my wife, and it was all cash based. When I went back there recently, it's all Paytm. If you don't have an app on Paytm, you actually can't pay. You can't pay an informal merchant. Where they're fortunate there is that their connectivity is second to none. I mean, every single person there has a smartphone. Data is incredibly cheap, so being able to change the digital world is a lot easier. Whereas here we have our issues with regards to really expensive data. A lot of areas in the country don't have connectivity, so they rely on USSD. So we could get to that stage, but we need a few things to change, and the mindsets to change to get there.
We do need a few things to change. Mindset is one that's more in our control, I suppose. But the other, just to add to the environmental obstacles, is around load shedding, is around signal, is around network in the country. How much, again, of a limiting factor has that been?
Yeah, it seems like we can't have a conversation in SA without the power situation coming up. That's how bad it's got. I think it's the single biggest obstacle in our country at the moment. Yes, there's things like crime, we know this. There's obviously huge state issues and governmental issues. But I think the biggest issue with South Africa, especially from a fiscal point of view, is the load shedding issue. I know there's a huge amount of effort now going into fixing the problems and trying to fix it from the private sector. Are now eventually able to get involved by pumping energy back into the grid at a cheaper rate even. But yeah, it certainly is a massive problem. We've seen it. The towers go down, the batteries go flat.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was actually away this weekend in Dullstroom with my family, and when there's load shedding, there's literally nothing. No signal. You can't make a phone call. You can't get a WhatsApp. You can't even send an SMS. So it is. In the outlying areas, it's bad.
So, I mean, just to add to the anecdotes, I was at the Four Ways Farmers Market this weekend, and a lot of them use the little blue devices. Again, no signal. So people put their orders in for food or whatever it was, and there were massive, massive queues to the point where people just walked away, and so there was no exchange, no business exchange actually happened.
Sure, I think a lot of these, and this is where we can help with payment certainly, is to make payment before you get there. So all you have to do is go fetch your goods. You don't have to go and wait in queues.
So what would that look like?
Depends. You could have it in either way. You could have a barcode you could scan online. You could go in and do a bank-to-bank payment before you get there. You could have a payment link on your invoice. That's the best way I've seen, is you click on a payment link on your invoice. You can do it on your phone, and it brings up, let's say, 5 or 6 different payment options. You choose the best one for you. You can even link your card when you've got time, so that you don't have to put your card details in every time. It just pulls it off your card if you choose card. Bank-to-bank payments, as I said, take really quick. You can use QR codes through Zap and SnapScan. And for those that have to pay cash, I think One Voucher has been phenomenal. They're really changing the way people see how we take cash off the streets and put it into online. What they have, they've got about, I think it's 20,000 cashiers, let's call them, around the informal market, where they can go and pay cash, get a voucher, and they can use that voucher to buy online. I think it's a great way of getting rid of cash.
Just in closing, what is your biggest observation, an epiphanic moment in the way that South Africans and South African consumers interact with payment systems, particularly these pay-stacked systems that we described at the beginning of our interview?
I see a lot of what I saw in India 10 years ago happening in South Africa now. And that's what's really got me excited in the beginning of our payments. It was actually a bit longer, 15 years ago. And I'm seeing that shift now in South Africa. I think the pandemic did sort of accelerate that interest from the public. It's about trust, trusting payment methods. When you're used to doing something the same way. I always use my father as an example. My dad's 74 years old, stuck in his ways.
Like my mom, she's 77, yeah.
They got their one way of doing it that they don't want to change. If he can do it seamlessly without having to worry, anyone can do it. So whenever there's a new payment method, I try it on my dad first, and if he gets it right and likes it and wants to use it again, then we know it's good.
I love it. Paul, I think that's a great note upon which to end our interview. Thank you very much for talking to us about monetizing PayStacks, and we appreciate your contribution today.
Cheers, man. Thank you so much.